Hey, podcast listener, even if you are alone in your entrepreneurial journey, know that today, right now in your earbuds, you are joined by thousands of entrepreneurs from all around the globe seeking to grow better, more profitable, location-independent businesses. If you'd like to learn more about what we do and download our entire back catalog, check out tropicalmba.com. Hey, welcome back to the pod. Today, I want to talk about one of the most important investments that early stage entrepreneurs ought to be making, and that's investing in your tribe, getting yourself around people that are on the same journey. And I think a lot of people avoid it because it's not one you can just buy, right? You have to earn the respect of others, and that can take time, and it can be difficult to find people that are, quote, your people. And that's part of the reason I do this show. That's part of the reason we host events. And we're going to tell a story of someone finding their people on today's show. And hopefully to inspire some of you today to go out and build a support network that can help you get to your goals. So regular listeners of the show might remember Greg Gerber, who's a member of our community, the Dynamite Circle, gifted an up-and-coming entrepreneur an all-expenses-paid trip to our annual event, DCBKK. The idea of paying it forward in that way has taken off in our community and has been an amazingly positive source. So at our most recent event in Austin, Texas, Meryl Johnston, who's the founder of the Bean Ninjas, offered 2 free tickets on behalf of her company, and Ian and I put up 2 tickets as well, with other members chiming in with everything from airfares to free coaching, free travel bags, and quite a lot more. So I thought it would be fun here at the pod to speak with some of the recipients of those gifted tickets, because when I got to meet them, each one of them had fascinating backstories, as you're going to hear. And just a full disclosure up front, in this episode, we're going to talk a lot about the Dynamite Circle, and you can learn more about it at tropicalmba.com/DC. Generally, we try to keep the podcast separate from that. We know not every listener wants to join a membership group, and of course there's qualifications involved, but that's the direction this conversation went in. That's the story we're telling. So you understand why we can't just skim over it in the show. So today's story is an interview with
Jen Anderson. I have a bow tie company called Mai-Tie, and we make bow ties from old Hawaiian shirts. Super limited edition. You only get 2 bow ties per shirt.
That's cool. And how's the business doing?
It is doing okay. It's tough from an operational perspective because we have to source the shirts. We get them from Goodwills. We have people in Hawaii go on shopping runs for us. There's a big operation around, cutting them up and sewing them. So trying to focus on that operational side, and then continuing to just really focus on marketing and driving traffic to the website. I would say we're still very early days, but people love the product. I always get good feedback on the product. So it's just a matter of working out all this stuff and getting it out there, promoting it more.
Now, it's true to say that Jen's company, Mai-Tie, is still in its infancy. She actually has a lot of professional experience in the startup world and in places like Wall Street. So let me just give you a little bit of background. Like most of us, Jen didn't just start as an entrepreneur. There's an interesting professional background there. And let me get on my soapbox here a little bit. We glamorize sort of people who build businesses out of their dorm rooms. But for me, it's way more interesting talking to people that build businesses out of their careers. So just because you've had a job for 5, 10, 15, 20 years doesn't mean that you can't leverage all of that experience and know-how into your very first business. And I actually call that exit velocity. Like if you have professional experience, that can often give you a lot higher exit velocity than somebody who has absolutely no experience at all. But let's get back to Jen's experience. So just as a background, she went to a prestigious school and got a job on Wall Street. So very ambitious, but didn't feel like that was a good fit. So she left to go do an MBA. It was at that time that she got interested in social entrepreneurship and spent time doing research in India. But to pay for that MBA, she took a job at Citibank in 2008, just as the financial collapse happened. So by a slightly circuitous route, she eventually made her way to San Francisco, startup Mecca, where she still lives with her husband and young daughter. So it was at that time that Jen really got immersed in this world that so many of us just sort of read about on the internet. So she ultimately ended up at the peer-to-peer loan company, Lending Club. And at this point, I'll let Jen pick up the story.
I don't know. I came out here. I love the startup culture. I love what's going on out here, but it is a lot of hype and it's different from what I expected. I'm not interested in like trying to build some financial services app that's you claim is going to reach 1 billion people, but probably never will. And, raise a ton of venture capital money and just being at these startups and seeing all the waste and all the bad ideas and the bad execution just kind of, I guess, turned me off a little bit. And I think around 2014 is when I discovered you guys and a couple of other blogs and podcasts. And I was working at Lending Club and it wouldn't make sense to leave because we were, about to go public. But I've just been listening for years and thinking about ideas. And at Lending Club is where I met my co-founder, and in the midst of just making some changes, moving a little bit further away from the city so that we could have more space for my daughter. I realized, I don't want to commute. I want to be able to kind of control my life a little bit more. I don't need a $1 billion company. I just need, like they say in baseball, like a couple singles and doubles. And I want the challenge of building and growing a business and seeing if I can make this happen. And it's now or never. So that's kind of where I am today.
One thing that I'm curious about, Jen, is I've never been to San Francisco.
What?
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Most of our listeners haven't been to San Francisco, but this is like the center of the world for so many of the products we use and so much of the culture we digest. What's it like there?
I got here in, I think, 2011. It's changed a lot even since I've been here. I mean, now I live further outside the city. It's a crazy, crazy place. There's so much wealth. I was in the city yesterday and I was actually at a co-working space and I found a parking spot right out front and I was like, oh, sweet. How did I score this parking spot? And then there's just homeless people like all around this like super fancy co-working space that is where all these like eager startup people are working and sipping their lattes. And there's some homeless guy shouting at me as I'm parking my car. And I remember going to parties and just people would talk about how much they fundraise. And I was at a party one time and some guy was telling me his idea and he's like, oh yeah, I just raised 20 million from, this really high profile investor, but I'm not going to tell you who it is, John Doerr. I used to network a lot with the venture capitalists back in the day and they're very eloquent in what they say. Everybody sounds really good here. Everybody sounds really smart and intelligent, and they are. But then I've been in a couple of startups that are just like so poorly run. And even at this one that I was at, which was a success, I mean, on paper at least. I mean, we IPO'd at the end of 2014, IPO'd at $15, stock went up to $25. Guess what it's trading at now? I think $3.65. And a bunch of scandals and mismanagement and people having to leave the company. I remember my company was working on a product. I was not involved in this product, but it was the highest priority for the year. And I remember saying to my boss, you guys are spending 8 months building this thing and like 80 engineers. I'm like, this is crazy. I was like, we haven't tested this yet. Like we haven't done any like minimum viable product or seen if there's really a market for this. Like, why are we like throwing all our, hats into the ring for this? And he just looked at me and he said, oh, it'll work. Because we had a fancy strategy team of, ex-fancy consultants that did an analysis and said it'll work. And now it's 2 years later and it's not working.
How did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur so young? What was like the touchstone that gave you even that idea?
I think it's just my personality. Like I admire and respect the hustle. I just like things that are new and different and going against the grain. And I tried to make myself more in line with the common man. I mean, like investment banking, you can't get more, in line with that, but I'm just not cut that way. I don't know. I'm a creative person and I'm just drawn to new ideas, and I'm drawn to I love hearing stories about people that kind of came from nothing and hustled and built an empire and all that stuff. I grew up in a single parent family without a ton of resources and just want to be able to, I don't know, make my own destiny, right? I mean, you guys talk about it on your show all the time, right? You can sit in a cubicle being, waiting around for somebody to like you and promote you. And, you're kind of chained to that cubicle, and what the person above you thinks about you and what the people above him think about you is everything, right? Versus just getting out there and focusing on pleasing customers instead of some boss.
What was holding you back from making the switch sooner?
I mean, I think just the way I was raised, my mother's very risk averse, and I think that just was ingrained in me at an early age. I mean, I remember when I was 27, she reported me kidnapped. One time I went to London and she just called all around, with all the people that I was staying with, because she hadn't heard from me for a day. So yeah, it stems from that. I mean, my father passed away when I was young. He was an accountant. That's a very conservative, good, bread and butter profession. And, I guess part of me always wanted to be like him. And so I even went to college thinking I wanted to be an accountant, and no offense to accountants and, being ninjas, got my ticket to Austin. So I love her. But I was like, oh my God, this is such a wrong profession for me, for a creative person. But I think I just wanted to follow that path because that's all I knew, right? Yeah, it's just kind of the only path I saw.
How did your friends and family take the news when you told them that you were going to forgo your career, which was pretty impressive, to start doing a strange and small business?
They think I'm crazy. I remember meeting with a friend from Citibank, a fellow colleague who had been through the same program as me, so had an MBA. I remember meeting up with him a year or two ago, and after I'd left my job, and he's like, "You left your job? Do you have another one?" And I'm like, no. I mean, that's why California is good for me at the end of the day, because people around here aren't afraid to take risks and aren't afraid to fail, and they just know they'll figure it out and they'll work it out in the end. So yeah, everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I don't know. I think I've come to terms with it. I used to let it affect me, but now I'm just it's my life, right?
What risks do you feel like you're taking?
So I do still have a network out here. And yesterday I was having coffee with somebody, and I have friends that seem to be doing well in startup land, or even, big company land in San Francisco. And especially going to a great business school, you have friends that are really climbing the corporate ladder and starting to get pretty senior at different places. And I get a little bit of FOMO about that. And then I'm like, oh, but I could probably hop back in. So it's that. It's if I needed to someday, could I hop back in? What if I need a salary? What about retirement? What about making sure my daughter can go to good schools? What about all that stuff? If this doesn't work out, how am I going to make ends meet? So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different in my case because I do have a husband that has a salary. So I'm so thankful for that. But I am a very ambitious person. So if I needed to hop back in, could I? Or, is that a big risk?
What are some things that you would tell startup Jen about the entrepreneurship path that maybe you didn't fully understand until you jumped in?
I think I knew it'd be lonely, but, it is pretty isolating. You have to be really motivated to wake up early and get disciplined and get shit done. So there's that, which is why having, plug for the Dynamite Circle, but having that community could be a game changer for me. I'm just early in it, but even though I'm around a bunch of entrepreneurs out here, it's different. They're all setting up offices in Soma, raising $20 million. So it's just different than what I'm trying to do. And there's not a lot of people like me around me. because right now I am kind of a bit location dependent. Well, I get this up and running and have a child and a husband with a job. So yeah, so I think the loneliness and then the resources, like I've had to teach myself search engine optimization, Facebook marketing, all that stuff that I kind of never knew about before, which I love learning about, but like it's kind of hard the first time when you try it and it doesn't like work. You don't have like a marketing department that's going to do things for you. You have to do everything yourself, which again, I knew, but like, I guess I just assumed it would all work out of the gate and it takes a lot more to get that stuff going.
Do you have a profitable Facebook ads campaign? What happens when you try to increase the budget? Your return on investment drops dramatically, right? That's because scaling Facebook ads is the hardest part of the game, but it's also the most profitable. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as just doubling your budget and watching your profits double. It's a lot of hard, strategic work, and frankly, it's a full-time job. Today's sponsor, Growth Ninja, is a performance-based Facebook ads agency that specializes in scaling campaigns, helping them go from $500 per day in spend to $5,000 per day while maintaining and improving your ROI. If you want to scale your campaigns dramatically while keeping your return on investment consistent and growing, go check out growthninja.com today and let them know the TMBA podcast sent you. Now, at this point in the show, I just want to jump in to give you a little bit of inside baseball about how Jen heard about these gifted tickets in the first place. Because I know this sometimes like this DC stuff and what we're doing with these events, there's so many of them, it's hard to keep track of, and it can just all be a little bit mysterious. And to further complicate the issue, we have minimum eligibility requirements, and it all can be sometimes a little bit much to sift through. Well, because Jen was on the mailing list at tropicalmba.com/subscribe, the offer came across as clear as day. It's like if you have a business that you're focused on full time, it doesn't have to have huge revenue. We want to bring you into the community and welcome you in. We're doing stuff like that more and more often as it's becoming a theme that those that have had some entrepreneurial success, one of their biggest motivators is to bring others along on the journey. And so do check out the mailing list to make sure that you're notified of all the stuff that's going on behind the podcast. So again, that's tropicalmba.com/subscribe. What's the tips for listeners that want to win these things?
I just replied and told my story and what's your business? What do you think you could get out of DC, Austin? I had 3 things. I want to meet other entrepreneurs. I want to figure out some of my operational issues with this business and some of the marketing. And these are my challenges that I'm facing. And this is how I could benefit from going to DC, Austin.
So what was it like rocking up to the AT&T Center in Austin, Texas?
Oh my God, it was amazing. I was so looking forward to the conference. I was nervous to meet you and Ian because, like, to me, I think I told you guys, like, I probably scared you when I met you because to me, you know, I've been listening for years, right? So you guys are like pseudo celebrities to me. So
that's crazy. I love it.
That was the nervous part. And then I just didn't know who was going to be there. I didn't know what to expect at all.
How would you describe who was there? I mean, when you go back and talk to your family about it or whatever, like, how do you describe these people that are on the other end of these podcasts?
It was way more diverse than I thought because I wasn't a part of the community. So all I know is what I read in your emails and listen on the podcasts. I was expecting it to be like younger and more backpacker-y, which is totally fine. But like there were just some serious business owners there, which was so cool. And there were people like me that choose to live in the US that could be location independent, but they've kind of put down roots and they have massive businesses. And a lot of the conference was focused on, okay, we started this a few years ago. Now people have some serious businesses. You know, how do we take it to the next level? How do you hire a remote team? How do you manage remotely? I was just blown away by that. I was blown away by all the different businesses, all the different people, how diverse everybody was, how welcoming and like how many cool ideas were there.
What was the thing that you got the most out of, or the thing that you remember most fondly about the event?
There were a lot of sessions where I learned things. I mean, I went to a session by, I'm forgetting his name, but the spy gear.
Alan Walton?
Yeah. He was really cool. And, he went over, what Shopify apps he's using and all sorts of e-commerce tricks and things like that. And I took a ton of notes. But for me, like that stuff, I can get as well by like reading and researching and talking to people. What was most amazing to me about the conference was just like finding my tribe. For the first time, like being around all these people that are just like me, right? Which I don't think I've really had before.
What are those like traits, that make those conversations so much fun? Like when I'm at these conferences, I'm always afterwards, I'm like, that was just so much fun to talk to everybody. What are those things to you that makes those conversations so different?
Yesterday, I was having coffee with someone who's my old boss, and he's like one of my mentors and such a good friend. And I was telling him about the conference, and I was telling him things like Amazon FBA are foreign to him. I mean, he has Amazon Prime. He orders things on Amazon all the time, but like he doesn't know what FBA means. Like I had to like define it. And I don't think he realizes that there's, like you guys have said, there's people making generational wealth selling things on Amazon. He's in entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley, and he just had no idea. It's just this whole like other world that people just don't realize, right? And then I'm there at the conference, and in my mastermind, most of us were doing something in e-commerce. They speak my language, and they just get it, like they're just talking about, oh yeah, I did this and I did that. And I, hunted down this supplier in rural Mexico for my product that I'm going to be selling on Amazon. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And people that I know out here, like they don't get their hands dirty like that. And I just love that. I love the hustle.
Did you find it difficult to do the mastermind?
People were telling me like people cry, scream, whatever. And like you all were saying, it's going to be exhausting. And mine was great. Everybody was really nice. I mean, that's another thing I should add. I was afraid I wouldn't fit in at the conference. And I think I did. I would say I was talking to one person, and he made some crack about like, if I had an MBA, I would never tell anybody in the Dynamite Circle. They'd just laugh you out of the room. So now I'm even nervous right now on your podcast to say that I have an MBA, because I do feel like there will be some judgment. You loser, you got an MBA from a top school. What's wrong with you? And I do. I feel like a loser in the Dynamite Circle a little bit, My mastermind was really supportive of everybody. Nobody was crying or screaming, I think we were helpful to each other. And maybe it's because we were all in the newer side of entrepreneurship. I've joined another mastermind through DC now. So I'm in a new one.
No way. Like an online one where you get on the phone.
Yeah, where we do a Skype call. So we just had our first one this past week. And actually someone from my DC mastermind is in it as well. So
someone from the in-person, DC Austin.
Yeah.
So how did that work? How did that process work? You just wrote to the staff and said, hey, I want to get into a mastermind? Or
yeah, some people at the conference that I met had told me that you could do that. So that was great.
As you're describing, like talking to people with these really big, important jobs, and they're part of these important startups. And I talk to a lot of those people too. For me, there's like something special and different about talking to someone who their like immediate interests are at stake in the conversation, because that's their business. And like you said, like you did SEO and you screwed it up or whatever. It's like, yeah, like you screwed it up. Like you can't sit there and say you didn't screw it up. Like there's a kind of a reality to it, or like a urgency to those conversations that's different than like the sort of things you can get away with in a conversation where you're talking about more ephemeral things like status or an opportunity or.
Yeah. And there's just no skin in the game like there is when you have your own business. And I just have mad respect for people in the Dynamite Circle and exactly that. Like you feast or famine based on
how real you can be.
Yeah, how real you can be, what you're able to create, making something that people want. There's no fluffy, cushion of venture capital money behind you, and you're making it work. You're making it happen.
So Jen, we're going to have to follow the story of Mai-Ties on the podcast now. You got us in on your story. What are the challenges that lay ahead over the next few quarters for you as an entrepreneur? What are you going to be facing this year that's going to mean the success or failure of your first business?
I think I have so much to do. And, I do have a child, so she's 15 months old. I can't work 24/7 on this business. And I don't want to. So I have so much to accomplish, and I have a limited time frame each day that I can dedicate to it. So I've got to be really focused and make it happen. I have to really teach myself marketing and get the word out about my products. And I have to figure out how to scale this from an operational side. I mean, we have big visions for the product. My mastermind gave me some really cool product ideas that I want to make sure are implemented and out for Christmas. There's a lot to figure out, and I hope I can do it.
One other thing is, since you're a listener of the podcast, is there anything you want to say to the listeners? This is the hardest question, but I always ask it just in case there's something that you'd want to share with the people that listen to this show.
Because I've been listening to it for so long, I would never think that here I'd be, sitting in a chair getting interviewed by you. So that's just super cool. The community is approachable and just a great network to be a part of. So don't be scared. Don't be intimidated.
I don't think Ian and I are particularly scary people.
Well, Ian, I don't know.
Ian's a little scary. Fair enough.
Yeah. So everybody's been very helpful and approachable, and don't think you don't qualify, right? Just apply and become a part of it. Go to the conferences, put yourself out there. I think it'll pay back in spades.
Where's the place that people could go to take a look at what you're doing or reach out to you?
Oh, yeah. And the other advice I'd give to users is everybody needs a bow tie. So go to www.mai-tie.com. And we have limited edition bow ties, wedding bow ties, and many more products.
Who are people that buy bow ties, Jen? Are they?
Well, there's my co-founder he's kind of the face on social media. He's, a early 30s hipster, vintage Brooklyn type guy. So there's that, right? There's that whole dynamic. People in the South wear bow ties. We have a wedding line. So bow ties for weddings, for the groomsmen, for destination weddings, and just people that are looking for something fun to differentiate themselves. I've had a couple of high school students buy them lately, all sorts of people.
Jen, this was awesome. Thanks again for coming by the TMBA podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What a fantastic talk. Big thanks to Jen Anderson for sharing her story with us, and further to all the members of the community and entrepreneurs in general who are taking some time to help others along the path to pay it forward. Love bringing these stories onto the show. We'll have a few more in the weeks to come. If you want to share your thoughts on this one, we're going to be posting the show notes and everything mentioned over at tropicalmba.com. And we look forward to hearing big things from Jen in the future. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next Thursday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hey, thanks for listening to the Tropical MBA podcast. You can go to tropicalmba.com, get access to hundreds of back episodes and all kinds of other goodies. Load up your iPod. That is the cheapest way to fly business class on your next international flight. We will see you next Thursday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, buddy.